Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to go through a lap of Cadwell Park in the BMW M2. First of all, coming down the start finish line, it's very important to stay to the left and just then allow the car to drift into the middle of the track and then towards the right hand side. Just before the bridge, we're all the way across to the right and as we can see we're right on the white line on the right hand side. We're going to leave it in fifth gear and we're just going to have a really nice and gentle blend of the brakes and off and then back onto the throttle. So if I just play this in slow motion, we can see not really braking much more than 20%, clipping the curb after the orange bollard on the left. And then at the moment the car is currently aiming to the left hand side. That's because we want to maximize the arc for the second corner to allow our minimum speed to be as high as possible and to keep the momentum as high as possible. So again, if I just play it all in slow motion, just again back on the brakes, no more than 20 or 30%, drifting the car across, dropping it down into fourth gear as well, and then if I just rewind, again play that again in slow motion, we are all the way across that curb on the right hand side, but by this point we're off the brakes and about 55 to 60% throttle. We're not really going to get much above this for this little section coming up here. So if you just pay attention to the throttle, again we're not even at full throttle, we're just allowing the car to drift across to the left hand side. If I just reverse it slightly, we are actually braking just before the crest of the hill or the brow of the hill because that's just another car length ahead. And as well, we're just keeping the throttle and the brake on at the same point to try and keep the body and the mass of the car as neutral as possible, because this is where you can really unsettle the car. So again, play it in slow motion, just really gentle on the brakes, introducing the car in. Don't touch the curb on the right, get as close to it as possible. Again, if I rewind it, we're right on that line, just ever so slightly to the left of the curb. If you touch that, it just unsettles the car and it then has a tendency to throw you too wide too early, which will make sense now. And again, we're just picking up the throttle ever so gently, not even full throttle, until we get to just the exit of the corner, probably about half a car's width from the curb. And the exit of our actual exit point here is this brown strip on the left hand side. So we're not really utilising the curb at all, but if you do go too wide here, even by a tyre, you will pick up a 1x. Here we're right on that limit without picking up a 1x. So to allow the car to then drift over to the middle of the track, change up into fifth, and then hug the left hand side. And then again, so if I just reverse that, so you see the 2 marker, this is the brow of the hill where that is. It's usually just like before, I think, 3 meters before. Play it in slow motion, we're braking maybe a car length after the 2 board, not braking any more than 50%, and that's very important in this car. Do not brake above 50%. On the brakes, at this point now we're going to change down from 5th into 4th and then into 3rd. We're just going to slowly come off the brakes before we turn in. Turning in just again about a car length before the turn in marker on the left hand side. And what our aim is here is to try and hook the right wheels on the inside of the curb, and what this will do is it will sort of hook the car around the inside. Again, we're still braking and we're picking up the throttle, so the throttle and brake traces, as we can see, they are overlapping. We're all the way across. We've hit that invisible cone. In real life you do hit that, and we're just hooking the inside curb. Again, we've picked up the throttle now, maybe about 60% throttle by the time we're straightening that wheel up. Do pick up the throttle just ever so slightly. What that happens here is we just get a bit of opposite lock. So again, we lift off the throttle just to correct that. There is some time in there still, there's some time left on the table. And then if I play it, we're going to short shift into 4th about here, and we're going to lift off the throttle at the same time. We're not going to leave it in 3rd. Again, it's all about keeping the car extremely neutral and extremely balanced. So again, we've probably dropped off to about 30% throttle there, and we're just going to hook again that inside wheel onto the dirt. If you go too far across again and too far, if you go another car length down and again go off there, you are again going to pick up a 1x. So again, you slowly, very, very slowly starting to pick up the throttle and build and squeeze on the power as you come around this corner here. Again, pick up the throttle a little bit too early, just having to do a little bit of correction just to stop the car from getting too much of a wiggle on. Because you've changed up into fourth, the car's nice and neutral, everything's nice and level. No one side or one corner of the suspension is too heavy under load. Drift out towards the left hand side just before the gooseneck. This is the one that scares everyone. Personally, I think it's the best corner, or chicane, or whatever you want to call it, in the UK. Not braking more than 20-25% there, and all we're going to do is we're just going to really gently squeeze on and then let off the brakes in one nice smooth motion. We're going to pick up the throttle just before the curb, again to keep that car nice and balanced before we get to the curb, and this is where the car starts to get a bit unsettled, which is okay so long as you're not too hard on the brakes or too hard on the throttle. I'll let this play at full speed. And what you saw there was just a bit of a brake. Again, what that does is, because there's a dip on the left hand side, again if I just rewind that, because you do actually go over a crest in the middle of the gooseneck, just picking up that brake allows the nose of the car to come down without it being too light, reintroduces grip on the front axle, and then allows you to hook the left suspension or the left side of the car in just half a tyre on the blue, half a tyre on the green, and half a tyre on the rumble strips. Again, it just allows you to use that compression to your advantage, and basically force the car left, because as we start to come out to the exit, it starts to roll off camber. So it's like on camber, off camber, on camber, off camber, and then we're at the exit. And again, we're not really picking up full throttle until the steering wheel is straight, and we're now aiming down the hill. And what you can see here, there's just a change in tarmac colour here, and this is the same in real life, as many of you will know. We're going to brake just after this. So here we go, you're about a car length, 3/4 of a car length after it, right the way across to the right hand side. This corner is all about exit speed, because it's a short straight, but it's an important straight. Again, we're picking up the brakes before we're even off the throttle. So I'll play this at full speed and then I'll walk you through what we do. So if I just rewind, again we're picking up the brakes, slow it right the way down, picking up the brakes, and again we're not braking any more than 50%, maybe about 45%. We do just hit the grass on the right hand side ever so slightly, but that's okay because it actually inadvertently helps the turning. As you can see, the car is pitching in whilst we're still about 20-25% on the brakes, and we're just slowly bringing off the brakes and introducing the throttle before the apex of the corner. So if I just rewind it here, we're actually picking up the throttle at the start of the curb. Now the reason why we can do that is because the left wheels are over the curb and actually on the little bit of grass on the left hand side here. And again, what that does is it inadvertently hooks the car in and keeps the car on the left. You get this wrong, you'll find the car starts to bounce and pitch and pogo because the car's very heavy and the car is quite heavily sprung. So again, slow that right the way down. The car does do a little bunny hop there as you come over that curb, but that's okay because again we're not too heavy on the throttle, we've been nice and gentle on the brakes, we've come off the throttle, come back on the throttle. Again, we're maybe about 60-70% here, just allowing the car to drift out. We've opened up the steering, and now we've aimed just for this last sort of quarter of red and white curb in here, and we're just going to nicely run off that. If you go too far on the exit here, you will again pick up a 1x, so it's important to try and avoid anything further to the right of the cursor. You can use just a little bit after the white line without getting a 1x, but it is best avoided. Because we've picked up the throttle so early, because we've come off the brakes and the car's nice and neutral, we're now going to carry all of that speed that we built up going down the hill all the way down this short straight. And it is a short straight, but you will gain a lot of time by doing this. We've done all of this in third gear. So we've come through the gooseneck in fourth, come down the hill, brake into third, and then we've turned left, and currently we're in third, going to change up into fourth gear. There's a change into fourth. You don't need to go all the way to the left hand side here. Some people do. I've tried it. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Although it is important to brake, it is important here to brake in a straight line and towards this little access road here. That's what I like to aim for, where I want the right hand side of the car to be. So I'll play it in slow motion this. We're going to brake just at the bridge. So here's the bridge pillar. There's a little orange marker. That's nice and handy to pay attention to. You brake any later than this, and it's just going to unsettle the car for the roller coaster that is about to happen. So we're again not braking more than 50%. We're going to change down into third. Don't change into second. Third gear. This car's got plenty of torque, so don't need to worry about that. And again, we're here. We're right where we were aiming for, right on this little access road, and we're going to turn in just before that. And what that's going to do is going to introduce the car into the banking here of the left hand side, and we're going to want to try and aim for a late apex here. If you go in too early, it'll end up throwing the car off and you'll end up in the weeds. Try and again hook the car on the left hand side. Again, nice and slow and gentle on the brakes and on the throttle. And again, what that's done is it's hooked that left hand side, those left two wheels, over the curb. If you go too far over, again, you will get a 1x. We're not really using 100% throttle through here. So you'll see we've come off the brakes quite early. Again, because we can afford to do that because the car is nice and neutral. And now we can actually keep that momentum and keep that speed as we now start the incline. So about 90% throttle there, just to again try and balance the car. We're actually going to start turning right quite early. Again, because we've carried quite a lot of speed, the car is going to want to turn right. But because we've hooked it on the left hand side, it's kind of balancing each other out at the same time. And now the car is just going to start to turn right, and we're going to hook over the inside. If I go on to rear chase, we're going to now hook over the sausage curb. I have done this in a road car, in a race car, in real life, and the sausage curb hit the bottom of the car and I thought it ripped the brake pipes out. But because we're in a simulator, it doesn't matter. So you can see that right front wheel, the offside front, is hooked over the inside of that sausage curb. But we're only about 20% throttle again, just to keep that car nice and neutral. And we stop it from rolling and pitching too much. Because as we all know, this car does weigh as much as a small moon. We're not going to go all the way to the outside here, because as you come over the mountain, come over the crest, the track actually does then start to blend towards that right hand side, and we're going to actually want to be more towards the centre or centre left. Again, because the track is going to want to go to the right, but also it's also slightly less steep here in the middle, and it's because we can see it's very subtle, but there's more of a dip and a rise here. Whereas if we keep the car towards the middle of the track, I find personally it keeps everything again nice, stable and smooth. Now the rear of the car will start to get unbalanced, and obviously you hear it hit the rev limiter there. It's important to keep the steering wheel here as straight as possible. Don't worry about the traction control. I find it quicker just to keep the throttle applied and let the traction control sort me out. But if you do get it wrong and you do have a little bit of lock as you come over that crest, as the rear axle becomes unladen, you will find yourself either exiting stage left or stage right. And here, this is where, as we all know, where the cafe is, where everyone likes to watch. And this little access road here from the paddock, we're going to want to be aiming for about here, and we're going to want to be turning in just before that little green patch on the left hand side. We've done all of this in third gear, and we're going to stay in third gear through the woods. So we've just started to turn in and brake again before maybe 2 or 1.5 car lengths before that green section on the left. Again, very gentle on the brakes, keep the car very, very neutral. And through here it all gets a little bit exciting and all a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Exuberant. So if we slow it right the way down, really gentle on the brakes, we're just rolling the car through. We're now over the curb on the right. The car will now want to start to dance and move towards the left. We're just going to have a little bit of a brake in a straight line now because we've straight lined it as much as possible. And now we're going to take the absolute biscuits on this curb on the left hand side. We're going to be right the way across that as far as we can. About 20 to 30% throttle, and once we hit the middle of the corner we're just going to pick up the throttle slightly. And what that does is it just allows the camber of the car to keep us moving towards the left and keep that speed up. The car's going to want to move out to the right. We're not actually going to go above 90% throttle through this whole section. We're just going to keep that speed as high as possible. Again, over the curb on the right hand side. If you do touch, there's one thing to note, if you do touch the grass about here or any moment after the end of the curb, you will pick up a 1x and that will be the end of your lap. Again, we've actually brought down the throttle because what's going to happen now is the car's going to go from laden to unladen to then laden again. So because there's so much mass in this car, we need to keep it as neutral and steady as possible. So again, we're about 60% throttle. As we come over the crest, the car's gone light now. As you can see, we're starting to apply some opposite lock, but that's okay because the corner does now start sweeping to that left hand side. We're going to start braking at this orange cone. Any later than that, you're going to get all in the ABS and it's all going to go very wrong very quickly. So we're braking at about 30 to 40% here, which is quite a lot, especially given the circumstances of how the car is going to want to move around. But because we've kept it stable, because we've kept everything nice and neutral, it's going to really make our lives a lot easier for this now quite difficult and tricky right-hander, the little hairpin that's coming on. So if I slow it right the way down, again the car is actually drifting now. We're actually having a bit of an opposite lock moment on the brakes, which is quite exciting. Again, we're now turning in the right. We've applied a lot more brakes here because of now the car is going through a transition. And what this excessive use of the brakes now does at 70%, it then allows us to throw the car in on the right hand side. Because the camber's going to the left, but we want to be going right, we need to actually purposefully unsettle the car just a little bit by using just that little bit too much brakes. And now, as we can see, we've pitched the car in where this tyre barrier is here. The car is now wanting to turn right, and we're going to go all over this curb on the right. We're going to absolutely maximise the apex of this corner as much as we can. So we actually come off the brakes and we are on the throttle at the same time. We're applying a lot of lock down into second gear. We've come off the brakes now, and what coming off the brakes just before, so if I pause it about here, because we've come off the brakes here and we're now on the throttle, say come off the brakes with just a little bit of trace on, the car is now more neutral than it was 2 car lengths ago, because we've gone from light braking to excessive braking, and now with that front end of the car, as we start to bleed off the brakes, the front end of the car is now starting to rise, starting to become more neutral, as the weight is now then shifting over to the left hand side as we turn right. And this then allows us to hit this very rough curb on the right. If you have too much brake or too much throttle as you hit that curb, you will find yourself bunny hopping. You'll either spin, you'll either be in the traction control, or you'll be in the weeds to a certain extent. So again, we've actually got maybe 30% throttle. This is just to keep the car nice and neutral, keep the front end of the suspension up. We can see a little bunny hop there as we now exit the corner. But what this has done, again, is allowed us to pick up the throttle nice and early, straighten up that wheel. And now this is, in my opinion, the trickiest and hardest corner on the entire circuit to get right. So, if I just play we can see here on the right hand side there's a little marshal post or barrier entrance. We're going to want to brake before this, maybe 2 car lengths just before. We're going to change up from second into third. We're going to leave it in third gear and we're going to brake really nice and gently. What I'll do is I'll play it in full speed and then I'll rewind it. So if we rewind it, we can see, a bit far, we can see that we're braking before that post on the right hand side. We're going to want to be turning in just after the access road, and what this allows us to do, so here's the access road on the right. We've now just started to introduce the car with a little bit of lock. So before this access road and on this access road here, we're now turning that car in to where the camber is, most severe. We've come off the brakes, we've picked up the throttle really early because this is a really important straight. We've hooked the car again over the curb. We're no more than 50% throttle, because if you go more than that, realistically, you're going to get into the traction control and you're going to lose mile an hour down this straight. So all the time from that first curb to this now second curb, we're slowly now increasing the throttle, and as we come off the curb we've gone full throttle, and now we're allowing the car to just drift with a little bit of opposite lock. Maybe we've just picked up the throttle just slightly too early. We've then drifting that car all the way to the exit, and you want to stay on this white line all the way down, because as we can see it's actually a steeper descent on the left hand side. What that's going to do is that's going to give us a little bit of a boost, maybe gain a fraction of a tenth, but every little matters. And there we go. Thank you very much for watching. I'm now going to play the full lap, and I hope you enjoy.